Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. I wanted to create this channel just to discuss books because I really like reading, and I created this video to just talk about 5 books that I think really impacted my life in some way that I think would be really enriching for other people to also read. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. Up first, we have The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. This is a short story. It's 125 pages. I would say it's a pretty good entry point to this list because it's pretty digestible. The writing style is really beautiful, but also it's not too dense. You know, sometimes with certain books you can kind of struggle to understand the story or what the author's trying to say because it's very like poetic. I would say this has a good balance of both being beautifully written but also easily understood. It follows an old fisherman in Cuba who embarks on a journey to the sea to potentially catch something that has caught his eye. I'm going to be purposely a little bit vague with what I talk about with these books because I want people to be able to enjoy them without being too influenced to have a certain idea going into it. But this story, for me, taught me lessons about the art of letting go, human resilience, but also understanding our limitations, and it not being a weakness to know our limits, but rather it's courageous to let go and not interject ourselves. I also think this was a really great book to understand possession and why it is that we sometimes want to own or possess things of beauty, but instead being able to simply let those things exist in their own way without our interference. It's a book I think about a lot, and I think it's a really fantastic read. So that's book number 1. The second book is Tuesdays with Morrie by Mitch Albom, or Mitch Albom. This is a story about Mitch and his professor Morrie. He finds out that his professor has been diagnosed with ALS. This was a really beloved professor to him who he lost contact with. So we have weekly meetings with Morrie where Morrie discusses life and kind of gives a life lesson each Tuesday to Mitch. And it basically re-begins their teacher-student relationship, and it's really beautifully written. It's a book that I've bought my friends for Christmases and birthdays because I think it's something that everyone should read. And I think if you're someone who really struggles with the fear of mortality and dying and what it is to die, how do we cope with grief, how do we let go of the life that we've lived, how do we let go of our relationships with people, how can we leave the earth, how can we do that? This is a fantastic book for that. This book made me feel both like reaffirmed in my fear of death, but it made me a lot less nervous to die, to be honest. Like, it just made me feel a lot more comfortable with knowing that death is inevitable, and so is grief, and that's just part of life, and to find the beauty of it as opposed to be super fearful. The third book we have is Lord of the Flies by William Golding. This is a story about a group of boys who crash onto an island and navigate the brutality of that lifestyle of survival, you know, not having the comforts and luxuries of a civilized society, but how that affects their relationships with one another and how they view each other. I think that this is really a great book to understand human behavior. As far as the writing style and the actual plot, it's not my favorite, to be honest with you. Like, some of these books in here, Tuesdays with Morrie, honestly, almost every other book in this list is a personal favorite of mine. This is not a personal favorite as far as the writing style and how much enjoyment I got from it, but I think it's just very functional and a book that everyone should have under their belt because it's a good like benchmark it's a good point of reference to understand human behavior and to see parallels of how we justify devaluing or dehumanizing other people's lives in the real world, how that parallels to the way that that's depicted in this story. Up next, we have The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. This is one of my favorite stories. I will say off the jump, there's parts of it that aren't very culturally sensitive. I don't think Sylvia depicts certain groups in the nicest way. Despite that, I do think there's a lot of value that can be taken away from this book. It's one that personally made me feel a lot less alone with worries of stagnation and the fear of being insignificant in life. You know, I think a lot of us sometimes struggle with the future and what we're going to amount to, and how do we put ourselves out there? How do we deal with that kind of expectation and pressure while also still trying to take joy in the mundane and take joy in our life? I think this is a really good book as well to understand like mental health. Throughout the story, I just realized I didn't even like give a explanation for the premise of this book. This book is a roman clef, or like roman clef. It's a biography, but she changes names and she changes places, so that's not super exact. But this is basically Sylvia's life in her early 20s, and it follows her kind of deteriorating mental health. At one point in the book, she does get institutionalized, and so it's a really, I think it really pioneered the widespread discussion of women's mental health and mental health just in literature, and opened people to being more empathetic and understanding of that experience, and to not see people who do have these sort of breakdowns or spirals as kind of like hysterical, but rather there's a real genuine reason, and also to just humanize that process a little bit. But I think this is a book that was really instrumental to my late teens, early 20s, because I just really related with Sylvia at certain points. Not in everything, but I think that a lot of people will be able to see themselves in some way in this story. And our last story to discuss is The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. This is one of my favorite books ever written. I think it is so beautiful in the writing style. It's devastating, it's heartbreaking, it will make you cry. You follow Pekla Breedlove. She's a young girl, a young black girl, and this story follows her family, her life through the eyes of her friends, the town, and her family's life as well. There's a lot of B-plots that happen at the same time, but even though you kind of jump around different people, it doesn't feel disjointed in any way. I would say of all of the books that I'm discussing today, this is the heaviest, both in the writing style, being a little more complex, but also in the subject matter. But I think that this is a fantastic book that illustrates the consequences of self-hatred, and how generational trauma can manifest in destructive tendencies, why it is that we see these patterns and cycles continue. And so for that reason, I think that this is a necessary read, because even if we want to, and even if we do practice those sort of skills, I think that this makes us confront them in a way that we would typically not. Yeah, those are my 5 books. I would be really curious to hear people's thoughts about them, and I would love to see other people's lists as well. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.